I'm sure you are all aware at this point, solar is incredibly strong this season with all the support it gets from the artefact. But I wanted to check out one of the other supported elements in Stasis, and specifically on Hunter, and cooked up something which is both fun and effective. The big two mods this build is based around is the Pillar of Ice and Hail the Storm, benefiting Stasis crystals in creation and damage. Pillar of Ice will spawn an additional Stasis crystal upon defeating a frozen target, while Hail the Storm increases damage from shattering crystals and frozen targets, and additionally will spawn tracking damaging shards from destroyed crystals. So, with a focus on Stasis crystals, I wanted to revisit Shatterdive. When was the last time you actually saw this being used? Especially so in PvE. But you know what, it actually kind of popped off. It needed some refining, but the end result allowed for an incredibly short grenade cooldown and a very aggressive playstyle, which will do well across the board for a bunch of activities. First up, the Shatterdive itself. It will of course require the Shatterdive aspect, but I also highly recommend the aspect Touch of Winter. This one enhances all Stasis grenades, and for this build, the Glacier grenade. In this case, it changes the pattern of the Stasis crystals formed from a line to a circle, much better for targeting a specific area, as well as spawning an additional Stasis crystal. The Shatterdive itself, while benefiting from both previously mentioned artefact mods, is rather potent. Against our buddy Carl, it's hitting for 1/3 of his total health, and any red or orange bar caught nearby will just be deleted. The radius is nothing too shabby either. For just a grenade charge, it's one of the best. The next part is getting the grenade ability off cooldown ASAP. What's the point in a Shatterdive build if there's nothing to Shatterdive? And the big carry here is definitely the Whisper of Shards. Upon shattering a Stasis crystal, you will be given the buff Improved Ability Regeneration, and while this is active, grenade energy is restored at an incredible 500%. 6 seconds is given per crystal shattered, up to a maximum of 11 seconds. Because of a Stasis crystal generated by the artefact mod Pillar of Ice, you can use this alongside the original crystal spawned with a Glacier grenade to fully restore grenade energy consistently in around 10 seconds. But there's even more than this you can utilise if you really want to min-max grenade regen. A Stasis weapon with Headstone can generate you even more crystals should you need them, and there's a lot of great options with this perk. I quite like the Unending Tempest, as it's easy to obtain and can roll with Headstone alongside Demolitionist for even more grenade energy. But some other great options include the Ice Lunar, Appetence and Disparity. The exotic Frosties fit this build great too. Not only is it quite aesthetically fitting, but you'll be doing quite a lot of sprinting, always charging down the next set of Stasis crystals, and while sprinting, Frosties will double the regen rate of grenade abilities, as well as your melee and class abilities too, as a bonus. And since I've started with some of the fragments and weapons, here's the other options I used. These are not too critical to the build, but do complement it nicely. If it's something you prefer to use, that's also perfectly valid. Fragments include the Whisper of Fissures. This one increases the size and damage of Stasis crystals, and will stack with the artefact mod with a similar effect. Whisper of Chains. This one provides a 40% damage resist when near a frozen target or a Stasis crystal. Nice to have since you are literally diving headfirst into enemies. And Whisper of Bonds. This one provides an orb of power upon defeating a frozen target. Stasis doesn't really have an effective method of healing during combat, so orbs of power will be used to provide a healing effect. More on that later with the armor mod setup. For the other two weapon slots, I opted to go with double solar weapons. Reason being is it can benefit from other artefact mods available this season, the Grant Radiant, Sheer Siphon mods with Stasis, and apply Scorch or Ignitions on targets. In the energy slot, a solid fusion rifle will do you well. Any of the Eremite, Royal Executioner or Cartesian. Heavy, I went for the Dragon's Breath, as it provides consistent boss DPS, and it pairs nicely with a fusion rifle. Dragon's Breath will also shatter Stasis crystals near the target it's fired at. So you can use Glacier grenades with this, as extra damage against targets you won't typically be shatter diving. Armor mods, I'll show the whole setup on screen now to save some time. It will be available in the description too with the dim link. Thermodynamic Siphon with Better Already and Recuperation are fantastic for generating orbs, and sustain by collecting them. Grenade Kickstart will further reduce the time between grenade charges, and give a use for armor charges collected. Artifact mods Pillar of Ice and Hail the Storm I've already covered, while Torch, Flint Striker and Kindling Trigger enhance solar weapons. For below legend content, then this build as listed will perform amazingly. You can use it for coil runs, nightfalls, any other seasonal content, and keep on shatterdiving until the cows come home. But for the harder legend or higher difficulty content, this is what I want to devote the rest of the video to. It's only a few minor changes needed, but also a shift in how you play the build to effectively deal with this type of content. Okay, so for this part of the video, I'll just do a bit of a commentary over a legendary Lost Sector run. The main thing I've changed really is the weapon setup. Because in high-end content you'll be dealing with champions quite a lot, I've changed it round so I can suitably deal with all types of champions. I've replaced the headstone primary weapon with a chill clip weapon instead. In this case I've used Deliverance, but you could use something like Riptide or just anything really. This is because this will deal with both Overload and Unstoppable champions. I've also equipped a solar submachine gun as my primary weapon, and the reason for this is because with the artifact mods, it will give you radiant on rapid precision hits. This will give it anti-barrier option. So between my two weapons here, I have a counter for all types of champions. I've also still kept the Dragon's Breath on because it's good boss DPS, and you can also use it to counter Overload champions. Also the way I play is slightly different. You can still shatter dive a bunch of red bar enemies, and you can also throw a stasis crystal on top of unstoppables or Overload champions, and that will stun them. But you could also use your grenade as a defensive mechanism as well, since standing near stasis crystals will provide you a 40% damage resist. So if you are under heavy fire, you can throw one to block LOS and provide yourself some resistance. So moving through the Lost Sector state, it's pretty straightforward really. The champions are easy to melt with Dragon's Breath, and you've always got backup options to stun them should they get away. And any other red bar enemy or just, your run-of-the-mill adds, you can easily clear with Shatterdive or just use your primary weapon if you need to. So approaching the boss as well, the main things in this build to deal with the boss is the Dragon's Breath itself, but you can also use the super. It doesn't really do a lot of damage, but it does keep them stunned and in one spot, so you can keep firing Dragon's Breaths into them as much as possible when it reaches maximum fuel stacks. Also, the Parabellum I'm using here, the SMG, is a really good role for this. Because it has attrition orbs, it's constantly generating orbs, and because of the stasis subclass, these are pretty much my only way of survivability, so just having a constant orb generation is really nice. I think this build could do pretty well in really all content. You've just got to really suit it to what you're doing. The anti-champion options with stasis as a subclass are already pretty good. Just add in some weight for anti-barrier and you're really good to go. As you can see here, the boss is pretty much locked in place by the super and the Dragon's Breath, so it's not even shooting me back. Really easy just to constantly stagger it, get a quick kill on the boss which has quite a lot of health actually, and it's just an easy clear. And so that's the lot for this video. I will be checking out stasis builds with the other classes too, as it's been really fun to mess about with. Thank you for watching.